What went wrong with Jaywick? Today, our attention is on Jaywick. Perhaps you can describe it as a sympathetic focus. Let's travel to this formerly idyllic town of 5,000 residents that now has a terrible bout with misfortune. Those who lived in Jaywick several decades ago and its founding fathers will be saddened by the recent appearances of their dear city if they could see it. The recent coverage of the by-election in Clacton reveals certain ugly sides of this town that call out authorities and demand explanations. This also prompts a search into the past of the town with the goal of comparing the same with the present. All that begs the question, what went wrong with Jaywick? That's the focus of this video. About Jaywick. For the purpose of this video, it would be good to remind ourselves a bit about Jaywick. This is a coastal village located in the Tendring District of Essex, some 3 kilometres west of Clacton-on-Sea. Lying on the North Sea coast of England, Jaywick is 97 kilometres from London and 27 kilometres from Colchester. It's in the ward named Golf Green in northeast Essex. The town was an idea born in 1928 by developer Frank Stedman. It was built in 1930 as a holiday resort for Londoners. He had observed that Clacton was popular as a holiday resort and was convinced that if he could sell small plots to East End residents, holiday homes could be built there. Stedman convinced residents to buy land with plots being offered as little as £25, which would be equivalent to £1,600 today. Buyers were even encouraged to self-build properties, as Stedman convinced buyers that a house could be built for as little as £395, which would be equivalent to £25,300 today. What's more, Jaywick was initially fields and salt marshes not far from Clacton and St Osyth. Most shops in Jaywick are on Broadway Street. The Martello Tower on the coastline, built over 200 years ago, was later converted into an arts and heritage centre. Actually, the artwork 46 Brooklands Gardens, made by Nathan Coley, was erected there as a 3-month showpiece. Little did Stedman know that his dream town would over time be officially named the most deprived in the country. Initially, the emphasis was on well-being, health and fitness. Outdoor exercises were popular among residents of the new town. However, Stedman was primarily motivated by money rather than altruism while planning this town. That could be part of the reasons his plans for landscaping the development, a lake and a sports centre never materialised. And this can also be a hint as to what actually went wrong with Jaywick. The origin of the woes. We'll be assisted to better appreciate the predicament of this town if we realise where it's coming from. Thus, let's go back down memory lane a bit. Architectural writers and teachers have seized upon Jaywick especially to illustrate the horrors of uncontrolled development and the charm that can be inherent in an indigenous vernacular of makeshift design. No wonder the teachers of architecture at Oxford Polytechnic used it to illustrate structuring one's own environment in defiance of authority. The architectural critic Sutherland Lyell says Jaywick doesn't represent a shantytown jerry building. Rather, it's a figure of an indigenous British paradigm of the 20th century bricoleurs' direct response to their exigent circumstances. Frank Stedman in 1928 had freehold plots of lands sold off to Londoners and Essex residents one by one. Since the intent was to build holiday homes only for use at weekends or in the summer, the buyers mostly put up wooden chalets and huts. In fact, they were often built by the families that bought them. The early photographs of the town show a town quite dense from the start. Towards the middle of the 20th century, there was some hostility to Jaywick from Clacton Council. Thus, the town received a direct blow when the 1947 Town and Country Planning Act halted the development of new plot land buildings across the country. Intensifying the blow, along with other East Coast sites, was the North Sea flood of 1953 that claimed 307 lives in the UK. Some 37 of these were in Jaywick alone, though other East Coast sites suffered similarly. Council and its poor policies. As you can see, bad council policies also contributed to the disheartening conditions in Jaywick. For instance, during the 1950s and 1960s, the Jaywick Ratepayers Association mounted pressure on Clacton Council in their demand for road maintenance and other provisions such as the water and sewerage services that were being enjoyed in other parts of the borough in return for their rates. Also, Stedman's original Jaywick Freeholders Association wanted better flood defences. That indicates the long-term negligence on the part of the government. During this period, the demographics of the town have shifted from holiday and weekend occupation to retirement and residential use. An increasing number of people from London and Essex were retiring to Jaywick, a seaside area they once visited as a holiday home while on active service. Early in 1971, the council began the process of eliminating Jaywick's Brooklands and Grasslands areas of chalet using its compulsory purchase powers. However, this process was halted by an appeal to the Department of the Environment. It scolded the council for failing to provide basic services. A sympathetic councillor in 1975 felt that the council had continued sulking over the inquiry decision, adding that they didn't want to know about Jaywick. As the hostility from the council to the area continued, Jaywick was placed under Article 4 directives, which required full planning permission for any kind of construction, including even minor alterations and improvements or garden sheds. This inhibited the rebuilding of decaying chalets that were either pulled down or burnt down. It appeared the council objected to the idea of building houses that weren't considered proper, but at the same time dragged its heels over matters that can catalyse proper housing streets, such as providing the proper roads and services that are compatible. Economic recession. The role of a collapsed economy also cannot be ignored. The wider recession in the early 1980s dealt a tremendous blow to Jaywick. Well into the 1970s, the town had maintained its reputation as a seaside destination, albeit poor, for day trips and holidays, and has kept its fairground rides and seafront stalls and shops. When the recession hit, however, these businesses gradually ran down. In 1983, the Butlins Holiday Camp, a significant local employer in the town hitherto, finally closed. Therefore, by the 1990s, the seaside resort had become a foul smell. Jaywick had become the kind of place taxi drivers weren't willing to take fares to. People with Jaywick addresses on their application didn't get shortlisted as employers were reluctant to hire them. Gradually, the freehold owners of the chalet plots decided to sell them up one by one as they acquired them. Even some of these people and their families simply abandoned the plots and forgot about their investments in them. Over time, more and more of those chalets landed in the hands of a few absentee landlords. These, in turn, let them out on short tenancies to occupants from other areas who could claim housing benefits. In 2011, The Guardian newspaper reported that landlords were able to get £450 per month for these chalets, even though in very poor condition. Was it avoidable? Are you now surprised that the embattled town, once an idyllic seaside holiday village, is now blighted by boarded-up shops, dilapidated homes, and have been discarded as rubbish? Topping a list measuring deprivation in 32,844 neighbourhoods and small areas in England, it has been ranked as the most deprived neighbourhood since 2010. However, this was quite avoidable and is still reversible. How could this situation have been avoided? Well, many areas of conventional housing, even in cities, find themselves in the same situation. While this downward spiral can be tough or impossible to prevent, a lot of differences could have been made if the residents had the will and desires. When Jaywick was thriving, the landlords, plotlanders and people who visited there and owned their own chalets and plots could have improved them when they had all the freedom to do so. Unfortunately, as more controls were exerted from outside, especially by the council, the worse the situation got. Treating people in the community like children often stands in the way of community development rather than leading to a thriving community. Thus, if people in their neighbourhood are allowed to take pride in their homes by letting them have a sense of ownership, it'll go a long way in reversing the ugly trend over time. An example is giving them the ability to make choices as to the shaping of their environment. What have you observed about Jaywick? What do you think went wrong with it? Please let this discussion continue along that sphere in the comment section. We'll appreciate your thoughts. Thank you for watching this video. Please don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell.